And let me tell you that the earliest form of human contract was the barter system, where goods were exchanged for goods. And I remember even in my childhood days in my village, I saw people coming with a basket of vegetables, mostly women, female, and we were getting vegetables in exchange food grains. So that was the earliest form of contract. The contract almost was oral, but with the invention of token money, the the way for written contracts was paved. And once they started entering into written contracts, people realized that written contracts has its own merits, certain advantages over the oral contracts. The first of it was that it allowed the parties to discuss the terms and conditions of contract before it became binding on them. Secondly, it enabled the parties to sort out the disputes which may arise in future. Thirdly, if at all any legal dispute arose, the written contracts could serve as evidence of the intentions of the parties, their rights and obligations. So therefore, written contracts were preferred over the oral contract. This is what I wanted to convey. Now, what I want to bring to your notice is that contract drafting, in fact, has precisely three stages. One is pre-contract negotiation, other is the drafting of the contract, and the third is the post-contract review of the draft. Now, so far as the negotiation is concerned, I can tell you that I read a book, Functions of the Executive. It was a book written by Chester Bernard. He was an executive of a private organization of America, and after he demitted the office, yes,
Book name?
Functions of the Executive. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the author is Chester Bernard. And he wrote that before any organization comes into being, what would be that organization is not decided formally, it is first decided informally. And said that nobody would join any organization unless he believes that it is in his interest or it is for his benefit. Same happens with regard to the contract also. So you may join, you may develop a commercial relationship, you may agree to a proposal, provided you find it suits your interest or it is beneficial to you. So here lies the importance of negotiation in the contract. Negotiation, as I said, is the starting point of any commercial relationship. And contract essentially or basically is the recording of the negotiations between the parties. When they negotiate, when they come to an agreement, when they agree on certain issues, those issues becomes part of the contract. So therefore, the the importance of pre-contract negotiations should not be underestimated. And I think there are two clear advantages of negotiations that we should look to it. That one is that for understanding the respective role of the parties, if we take part in the negotiations, you'd be able to clearly understand what what would be the respective roles or rights and liabilities of the parties. And secondly, if you take part in the negotiation, you would be able to minimize the risk of future misunderstanding. Now, so far as the contract drafting is concerned, what we do is that first thing we do is that we try to find out the title of the contract or of the agreement, so that the nature of the transaction could be ascertained. For example, we write it as partnership agreement, rent agreement, or gift deed, whatever. Second thing we do is that we write about the parties to the transaction or the persons executing the agreement. Third, we note down the consideration involved and the mode and manner of consideration. And the most important aspect of a contract is to note down the terms and conditions of the agreement and the rights and liabilities of the parties. It is this area which gives rise to all the disputes and differences in future. Therefore, the whole purpose of the contract is to minimize the future disputes, and therefore our whole effort is to write down the terms and conditions and the rights and liabilities as close to their intentions as possible, as clearly as possible, as concise as possible. We should see that the language is very clear and precise. Words used are unambiguous, having only one meaning or interpretation. We must also see that no terms and conditions or the rights and liabilities are missed or left out. Now, there are certain clauses which forms part of every contract, or at least should form part of the good contracts. And these are things like force majeure. All of you must be knowing that force majeure is a French term which means greater force. It alleviates a party from contractual obligations as a result of forces or events beyond their control. So if you make it clear that if these things would happen, I won't be compelled to perform my part of the contract. So then you would skip the non-stipulated compensation. So therefore, this force majeure, this pandemic, flood, droughts, these are considered to be the force majeure. Another important clause which may be there in the contract is the stipulation with regard to the third party. Normally, it is included as subject to clause. For example, if I say that company A will supply 50 cars a month to company B, subject to supply of materials by company C. So even if the agreement is between company A and B, the C comes into picture, and this should also be stipulated in the contract, because if we will not stipulate, if because of the failure of the company C, you have to face the consequences of failure of compliance. So then you will again be uh, bracketed in the non-stipulated failure. So this should also be mentioned in the contract. Then comes the provisions with regard to the legal jurisdiction. Because once if you are negotiating a contract across the border, the civil law of the respective jurisdiction may be fundamentally different. So therefore, at the initial stage of drafting the contract, one should be clearly specify that what would be the jurisdiction of the legal jurisdiction. Then we also include arbitration clause. Nowadays, it is proving to be less expensive and quicker mode of settling disputes. After once we are able to draft the contract, next important aspect is the review of the draft, and it has certain advantages. It allows you to pick up the mistakes, the errors, the corrections that has happened. Then it enables you to ascertain whether the words used are unambiguous or not, whether the language used is precise, compact or not, whether it complies with the law. Because there are several provisions you must have read in the Contract Act where contract is said to be void. So if those things have been taken care of, not whether it is against the public policy, whether the impossibility doctrine has been taken care of, now all those things have to be seen. You while reviewing, you can look to these things, and whether the duties and responsibilities of party have been clearly spelled out or not. So the key to a good draft is first unambiguity and very clear and precise language. This is what I wanted to convey. Now over to Anushka.